Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this exciting webinar. As you come in, I'll ask that you type in where you're hailing from today. For some of you, it might be, no, it's not going to be more. It might be morning, depending on where you're from. But for some of you, it might be afternoon, evening. If we have any folks from the UK tonight, we know that it's bedtime. So we really appreciate you being here. But if you could, just say a little hello to everybody. And let's see where everybody is coming from. I'm looking in the chat to see. I see folks are coming in slowly, getting themselves together. It's wonderful. Thank you for coming. This is good. Excellent. More people coming on, logging on. Again, as you come in, if you could just type in the chat where you're hailing from today, we would really appreciate that to see. And it also gives you a chance to say hello to other people, to greet them as you come in. That would be really great.
Dr. Wessel-Sfinchi, we have a comment in the Q&A saying that the chat is disabled for folks.
What? I was wondering why I don't see anything. Thank you so much. Trying to see, why is that? That's a good thing. Dr. West, would you continue to say hello and greet people and so on while I try to find out what's going on?
Absolutely. Well, we're really glad that you're able to join us. I know we have, it looks like about a little over 30 people already logged in. We had I think 227 people who registered. So we're hoping that people will continue to roll in. It's a little bit different for us to have our training on a Sunday. So we thank all of you who are here and for bearing with us while we figure out why the chat is disabled for some people or for everyone. We definitely, as always, we love our shout outs. We like to hear where people are coming from and what you have to say. It's really great to see where people are logging in from within the United States and, of course, all of our people abroad. We appreciate all of your support and commitment, especially, like I said, on a Sunday evening. There's a whole lot that you could be doing, and we really do appreciate the fact that you value what our students have to say in their own words about their experiences in dealing with race-based trauma, and prioritize that as you plan your weekend to make sure you could be here with us. So we welcome you, and we're excited about our panelists and our guest artists. I think that you're in for a real treat, and hopefully we want to make it worth you taking time out of your weekend to do this. We want to honor the fact that you are prioritizing this and make sure that you get bang for the buck, that you get what you hoped you would receive from this.
But I don't know.
Okay, so I see some more people are logging in.
I can hear them.
That's awesome. I think what we want to do is to go ahead and get started. I will continue to troubleshoot to find out what's going on with the chat feature, to find out what's going on with that.
Right, because we're able to put information in the Q&A, but not into the chat. So we see.
Yeah, that is so odd. Yeah, we didn't do anything differently this time at all. Yeah, I will continue to check that. And
speaker.
I think I have fixed that.
Amazing.
I'll try now. Let's take a look at the chat. You should be able to, yay! Thank you. All right, for technology, awesome.
Thank you.
I'm starting to miss you because you're so active. So I was starting to miss you. Absolutely.
All right, Seattle, excellent.
In the house.
Dr. Wessel, I'm noticing that they're sending it just to the host and the panelists, so they might not be able to see each other. Is it possible to open up like the everyone option as well?
Attendees can chat with everyone. That is the...
Yeah, I see someone has done that.
Okay, perfect.
someone from Canada. So we have, let's see, Seattle.
Yes. So I believe I did it correctly. There we go. There we go.
David's in the house.
I
Okay.
see that. I see that. That is wonderful. We got Florida. New Orleans always represents Tennessee, Maryland. Thank you, Canada, for showing up every time. I love it. Awesome. Oregon, Michigan. I love it. I love it. And
Manchester.
Coral, you're up. You get a star. You get a star from Manchester. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Australia.
What? So what is it? It's 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Ohio, Wisconsin, and Rhode Island.
Thank you so much. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. I'm coming to Australia. I'll be there in October. So I don't know.
Proximity. Away from the microphone.
I might see you. This is great. Awesome. So now we're starting to get we're thinking about this conversation that we can have. One of the things that people talk about in our surveys, and don't forget, we'll have a post-webinar survey today. One of the things that people are talking about is that we actually create community in here, and we really love that. So we appreciate you coming and being a part of this and being so active in the chat. I love it. Thank you. So let's get started. I will share my screen. I think, let's see. Come on. There we go. And get the slideshow going. Awesome. Dr. West?
Yeah, so we're going to mute Geneva for the time being. So people can still hear her. So as always, we start off by just introducing ourselves. Of course, we always have new people. For those of you who are with us a lot, you've seen this slide before, but this is just to introduce everyone. Dr. West Olatunji and I are co-founders of Crest Achieve, and our bios are available on our website, which is Crest Program, Crest with an S, program.com. We also have with us today our research fellow who was with us as a graduate research assistant. Dr. West Olatunji, if you could just advance the slides. So those of you who know her, she does an amazing job in terms of everything, really. But in particular, the way in which most of you would probably interact with her is that she makes comments, she shares from her professional and personal experiences about the various topics that we cover. And she also does an amazing job of keeping up with the questions for the Q&A section. Always behind the scenes, we have Janae Bond, who is our graphic designer, who was formerly our social media intern. And so hopefully you can see that we have really great members of our staff who come in one fashion or another and morph into more complex or complicated roles the way that Dr. Rebes, I was going to say Pettion, formerly Dr. Ashley Pettion, who's also changed in many different ways. But both of them came in as either graduate assistants or interns and have shown so much, progress and development that they have chosen, and we've elected to have them move on to have much more complicated responsibilities with us. So we're really lucky to have both Dr. Rebes and Janae Bond, Ms. Bond, with us, and looking forward to adding to our team. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. Today, of course, we have our special guest because, of course, we can have a panel discussion about the experiences of Black students with race-based trauma if we didn't have actual students who were willing to come and share their own journeys as related to this topic. So today we have three panelists and guest artist. We have Peyton Nunnery, who is a 14-year-old freshman at Benjamin Franklin High School. She enjoys playing volleyball and plays for her school. And she is very appreciative of having this opportunity. And we're excited and appreciative to have her with us. We also have Andrea Pierce, and she's a New Orleans native. She's a third-year grad student at Xavier University of New Orleans in the Clinical Health Mental Health Counseling Program. She's currently a GA, or Graduate Research Assistant, for the Center for Traumatic Stress Research with Dr. Westo Lutunji. And our third panelist is Dakaria Heru, who was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, currently living in Philadelphia, in Philly, and she's studying communication studies at Temple University. And last but not least, we have our special guest artist, Geneva Arunga, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who's from Kenya. And she performs politically grounded poetry, spoken word, and rap. And she's a popular local teacher, coach, and cultivator. And she's traveled the world collaborating with artists of all genres and brings us her socially aware artistry. And we want to do, I know that Geneva sort of was getting her sound system, I guess, and all of her visual logistics worked out. So hopefully, Geneva, I don't know if that's already been handled. I know that we might have had to mute you while you worked on that. If you're ready, we want you to go ahead and perform. If not, we can move you a little bit further in. So Geneva, can you weigh in on that? Are you ready? Is everything worked out?
You guys hear me?
We can hear you just fine.
Okay, and now we can see you. Are you ready? Excellent. Well, everyone, you're in for a treat. Geneva's going to go ahead, and if you're ready, we're ready when you're ready.
Letter of resignation. I see you. You can't stand me. used to shame us till we lost it. Now they charging us to get it, call it boss chick. That sound like more than just a spending habit. Trying to get established in a world that laughs at us. Dear America, I love you, but I gotta find a way to keep from going crazy, feeling like I'm in a daze. See this image that you made me and made me see. I can't keep being the scapegoat. I can't keep being the punching bag. Same old tired stories like that's all we ever had. Nah, forget that. I'm beautiful, I'm black, and you can see that. While my people are silenced, treating us like we're mindless, we define our blackness. Our blackness don't define us. Dear America, I love you, but I don't know what else to say except we can't go on this way.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I just want to give a shout out to my brother who came and did this with me, Awarunga. I appreciate you.
Awesome.
Loving you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, yes. That was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And we thank her. We thank her so much. I put her website in the chat so you all can book her for your events. She travels worldwide. I'm sure she'd be glad to go to all these exotic places you all are hailing from. And we'd love to have her here in New Orleans for sure. So I need to figure out how to get to Geneva to New Orleans as well in person, We would love to see her. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Now let's, thank you. Take a deep breath, right? And let's move on to more of what it is that we want to share with you. And keep those comments going in the chat. Keep them going. Thank you. That was such a great way to open. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Wow. It's very moving. I have to, like we said, take a deep breath. I definitely need to regroup. There was so much in that poem and that performance that I'm sure we're going to draw on later on, whether it's the panelists or those of us who are facilitating and co-facilitating this, to reference as we think about different experiences and what it's like growing up in America as a Black person, a Black young person in particular. But we want to, before we move into the meat of the presentation, we always cover our updates and reminders. So for those of you who have been with us, just as a reminder, CREST program is really a family of credentialing programs. And one of the things that we do is offering these trainings every month. But really, our focus is on our credentialing programs. And the first program was CREST Achieve, which is focused on the provision of training for educators, parents, and clinicians of Black children, focused on promoting Black excellence, academic excellence, and emotional well-being in Black children and other children who are socially marginalized. The second credentialing program, which is really becoming more of our focus at this point, is called CREST Liberate, and that's a more research-oriented. And you can find information about CREST Liberate, of which Dr. Wes Olutunji is the primary creator of CREST Liberate. And that program has 8 units. And you can find out more about that and even pre-register if you go to our Thinkific site. So you can see that it should be finalized within the next week or so. And you can go on, you can pre-register now, and you can begin that training program. If you're more research-oriented and want to learn ways of incorporating a more emancipatory focus into your research, you can complete that training. So that's what CREST Liberate is about, and it's hot off the press. The second thing is that we're recruiting, as you those of you who were here when I was talking about our current staff, we have had 2 of our staff members transition to more updated and complicated positions. So right now we have positions that are open. So if you're interested in becoming or learning more about a graduate research assistant position or a social media intern position with CREST program, please go to our website, and on the website you'll see information. In addition, I believe Dr. Rabes is going to go ahead and share the descriptions for those positions, so that anyone you're interested in, if it's not you, but you know someone who has skills in those areas that might have interest in working with us, please share that information. We also wanted to let you know about an upcoming plan that we have, upcoming event. In February of next year, early February, I believe it's February 1st to the 4th, the CREST program, particularly CREST Achieve, will be traveling to the ESEA conference. We did that last year. That was our first year. This time it's going to be in Indianapolis. We're going to take our team and we'll be there. We'll have an exhibit booth, and we also will be presenting. So this year we'll be presenting on CREST Achieve. And so for those of you who are tuning in, who we met at ESEA or are planning on attending ESEA, just be on the lookout for us. We'll be in the exhibit hall and we will be presenting. The next topic has to do with our newsletter, Uplift. So we have a quarterly newsletter, and the most recent edition was the summer edition. And we did share that. It's on our website. We also shared it with our subscribers within Constant Contact. So if you have subscribed to our newsletter, you should have received that link. If you didn't, please let us know. If you have not subscribed to our newsletter, we ask that you go to our website and go ahead and subscribe, and you will receive updates. You'll receive our various editions of the newsletter, and you also get information ahead of time about training events and other events that are happening related to CREST program, CREST Achieve, or CREST Liberate. And then the final topic has to do with our training schedule. So summer is coming to an end. For many of us, summer is over, and we're in fall. And Dr. Wes Olutunji, you can advance the slides. So we have today's event, which of course is our panelists of students, Black students talking about race-based trauma. Next month, Dr. Rabes is taking responsibility for that training event. And she has some really exciting things planned. It's related to LGBTQ Black youth, focusing on acceptance, protection, and support. So that's our October training event. November, we'll be focusing on preventing suicide and homicide amongst Black men and boys. And in December, we have a blast from the past, I guess we could say that. And it is infusing culture into your December holiday events. Part 2, we did it last year. Yes, we are going to add the link to our website. I think that Dr. Rabes has just done that for us. Keep it in mind that every month we have our training events, and Usually they're set up as webinars like this event is scheduled. However, in December, we do it a little bit different because we want everyone to be able to provide input. So it's set up as a meeting. So you'll be able to talk to each other. You'll be able to share. It's sort of a show and tell. And so we ask everyone, if you can, if there's something you would like to share about how you infuse culture into whatever holidays you celebrate or whatever things you do during the December holiday season that focuses on African and African American culture, or the cultures associated with the African diaspora in general. You can bring whatever it is. It could be a game, a toy, food. It could be a drink, whatever. You can share with each other and with us, and we do the same thing. So we share examples of how you can infuse culture into these celebrations. And so it's limited to only 93 people. So we've been having somewhere between 200 and 300 plus people register for each event. So if you want to register, you might want to go ahead and do that. Even though it seems like December is kind of far away, it isn't in terms of making plans. So it is available on Eventbrite, and we can share that link with you as well. All right, as we move forward. Okay, so now we're going to share some background information about this topic, and then we're going to move into having our panelists start to share with you their own personal experiences. Dr. Westover, to you.
Yes. So let's start with just providing some baseline information. And as you all, thank you, have talked about, yes, we're providing you with research to ground our statements, our assertions, because we want you to be educated. We want you to utilize evidence-based interventions. We want you to be able to provide professional development in your workplace or anywhere really. And we want it to be strong. We want you to look good. And we want you to make sure that you're very professional in what you're talking about, because our topics are, for some people, new information. For other people, it might be controversial or whatever. And I get a lot of questions. People email me and they say, are your trainings also for people who aren't Black? Our trainings are really for anyone who works with Black children. And first of all, there are a lot of parents of Black children who are not Black. And yes, they need to be here. There are a lot of teachers of Black children who are not Black. And there are a lot of mental health professionals who work with Black children, and they're not Black either. But we want to make sure that everyone working with Black children is using the most effective tools. And we believe that a culture-centered approach, placing culture at the center, is the most helpful, is the most effective. So let's start. I don't know why my computer has a life of its own. It keeps pausing to share, but environmental factors. So one of the things that we know is that racial discrimination is really a gateway for a lot of other issues that children might have. So children might be at risk, or they might be experiencing other things that might be in their environment. There may even be personality issues that they have, but they might not surface, or they might not tip over, right? If it were not for those racial micro and macro aggressions. So really, when we think about it, race-based stress really is, something that can tip children over. It can cause this additive effect for them in terms of the challenges they're having. So what that means is that all children have challenges. All children are dealing with things. That's true. Some of those things are developmental. Some of those things happen to be related to their familial issues or whatever. But Black children in particular are going to deal with these additional problems that are related to racism. The most important thing is that a lot of the racial aggressions that Black children experience are in the educational setting. And you would think that schools would be safe places, but because of the racial microaggressions, they're not. And it's high time that we started thinking about that, talking about that, and intervening within the schooling environment. And so we know as a result, they're experiencing higher levels of psychological and emotional distress. Dr. West?
Okay. All right, so what sorts of situations do Black youth, Black children, Black students experience? Well, we did a training that was entitled, well, partially entitled, Take a Walk in My Shoes, where we talked about all the various types of race-based and ethnicity-based discrimination that students of color, children and youth experience. And so this is just a summary, and this is based upon the research that was conducted by English and colleagues from 2020. That goes back to it having a mind of its own. But they had these various categories of situations that youth experience. So everything from various assumptions, from being assumed to be criminals, to assumed to have intellectual challenges or being inferior. The assumption that, you know, all people of certain race or ethnicities have a common experience, so you can speak for the entire group as opposed to just being able to speak about your own particular experience or your own family's experience. Being treated as a second-class citizen, and whether that be in the community or in the school or clinical setting. And then there's a whole category of situations that are considered to be micro assaults or microaggressions that can happen across settings. There's also situations where students or youth are exposed to jokes or teasing or bullying about racial or ethnic minorities. It could be about natural hair, hair texture, skin color, facial features, body type, any of those things. And then the last category, well, second to last category, has to do with hearing about family members and or friends being discriminated against or being treated badly because of race or ethnicity, skin color, language, accent, and country or culture of origin. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they themselves are experiencing these things. It could be historical, hearing about, you know, what happened to a great grandparent or to their own parents or grandparents, et cetera. In addition to sometimes just being exposed to what happens in terms of, you know, events, world events. So whether it be things that are happening across in other countries, or we're talking about within the United States, if you live or within your own country, if you're outside of the United States, just hearing about what's going on and the things that can happen to you, that, you know, people who look like you, who sound like you, who have similar characteristics as you, being discriminated against, being brutalized, being killed, being attacked, could also be a form of race-based trauma. And then there's the whole online piece. So the online exposure to racist or really intolerant comments or images or jokes, or being excluded from websites based upon race or ethnicity. So these are all ways that children of color or and young people of color, so they looked at adolescents and I believe young adults. And these are all ways that they were described by those individuals about what they were experiencing in their various settings. And so these are some common things to think about. And sometimes I think that we talk about so many other things that our youth are experiencing. We don't really consider all of these things. So that, and sometimes maybe there's not a forum to have those conversations. Or people feel uncomfortable having those conversations. Suppose if someone, oh, they should be covering it here, you should cover it at home, or maybe they're covering it in other settings and not realizing that sometimes the behaviors that you're seeing are reactions to these various experiences across settings. And it's important to allow the students to have voice, give them agency to talk about those things, not only talk about them, to be able to provide them with practical solutions and support, and to make an effort to change some of these things, to excise racism from their various environments as well, not just them learning to adjust, although, you know, you can't eliminate all of it, but we can certainly do some work to decrease how often Black students experience these race-based traumatic events, but also to help them to adjust to the ones that we can eliminate or prevent.
So you've heard me talk a lot about continuous traumatic stress, which is very different from, PTSD. You've heard about that, because this kind of trauma, this kind of stress is not in the past, and it typically isn't just one event that has occurred, but instead it's something that happens in the present and the future. So what that means is that when we're working with Black children, we need to be arming them against the future, of thinking about how are they going to handle a situation in the future? How are they handling things in their present? So some of the things that we look for when we're working with them might be some behavioral symptoms. So for instance, we have teachers who might be misinterpreting children's behavior and not look at the root, but rather looking at symptoms of hyperactivity, aggression, difficulty concentrating, and not asking the question, what might be the cause of their distress. And at home, again, thinking that it's just a bad child, or it's, conduct or attention problems, rather than asking questions about children's exposure to race-based stress. So now we've got a poll we're going to launch. How often do you talk to Black children or Black students about race-based trauma? And this is for everyone. So I'm going to launch this poll. You should see it. You have choices here, and you can only choose one. But do you talk to them daily, weekly, maybe monthly, once a month, occasionally, depending on what's going on? Rarely, meaning it's got to be a George Floyd experience, or it's way too difficult to talk about, too stressful, it's bad news. Never. I don't even know how to talk about it. Never. So I see you all. So we've got about 70% of you who've responded. Keep on going. Let's see if we can get full participation from our participants today. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy. And then thinking developmentally, how do you talk to your child if your child is 5 or 15? How do you talk to them when they're 35? Really, my children are older. And we have, discussions all the time. So I don't think it ends. For that matter, I talk to my mom still about race-based trauma. And so it's something that never ends. We always have the opportunity to talk about it. But the question is really, how do we talk about it? I think that is the issue. How do we do that? Okay, so I think we have just about everybody except the panelists. So I'm going to share the results with you, and Dr. West is going to talk to you about it.
Okay, so by far the most common response was that people talk about race-based stress with Black children occasionally when something comes up. So people are using it sort of like a teachable moment, these different situations that come up, rather than being more proactive and either bringing it up, even when there's nothing in particular that's so-called coming up. To think about, racism is sort of like the water in which we swim, right? So it's not that something special needs to come up. It's part of our lives, our daily lives, and it may not be something that gets a lot of attention or may even seem very noteworthy all the time. But though the little things that maybe don't get our attention can still have a profound effect on us. And so it's important to find ways to more regularly just sort of check in with Black children, Black students, whether they be, across whatever level from, pre-K all the way up to grad school. It's important to check in with students and find out exactly, has anything happened, or how are you feeling? Has anything in particular occurred that might be race-based? And how have they dealt with that? How has that impacted them? And whether they need support, whether it's emotional support, whether it's actual physical support, you can go in and help out, help to address the issue, etc. Second most common response, I guess, is there's a tie, three-way tie, weekly, at least once a month, and then never. So about 13% of respondents said they never talk about it, even when there's a major event, even when something comes up. We did not have a follow-up question. I know Dr. Westover-Tunji did make a comment about it. It could be that it's difficult. People may not have the words. People may feel as though it's too emotionally laden. Maybe it brings too much up in you, or you're afraid that you'll say the wrong thing. It may make it worse. People say, let sleeping dogs lie. So I'm not sure what reasons people might have for never talking about it. But hopefully we'll be able to talk to you. Either we've done that in the past when we've had other training events where we talked about, okay, what can you do? How do you, even a small change can be a very important change. But for now, let's leave it here that the most common answer is that occasionally when things come up, typically there's a teachable moment and you're taking advantage of it. And then there's some variety. Very few people said daily or rarely. So that's pretty much what we found for who we're working with. And we'll keep that in mind as we move forward to tailor this to you. Okay, so when we know, what do we know about protective factors? Well, the strongest of them are at 3 different levels. So we talk about at the individual level, the relationship level, and the community level. At the individual level, we look at things like the child's skill level. So we talk about self-regulation, relational skills, and problem-solving skills as being the key skills that are important at the individual level. And then their level of involvement in positive activities, whether they be sports activities, whether they be spiritual or religious activities. So just activities in which they're involved with social peers, that they have positive adult role models, etc. At the relationship level, we're looking at parenting competencies. So that includes both, parents, grandparents, anyone who's involved in the parenting process. Sometimes it's not even people who are biologically related who are involved in parenting, right? And so it is about looking to see who are those individuals who are serving in a parenting or caregiving capacity, and being able to look at those levels of competency, so their ability to talk about these issues, their how they rate themselves in terms of their knowledge level, skill level, level of comfort, even their own, how they've dealt with their own race-based trauma is a very important piece. Relationships are also important in terms of thinking about whether or not these youth or students have positive peers that they're associating with, and they have caring adults in their lives. At the community level, we're looking at having a more positive community environment in terms of having things like lower violence levels, et cetera, low levels of unemployment, as well as looking at the school environment. Of course, children don't necessarily get to always choose. Sometimes they have to attend their local school, and looking at how's that school performing, what are the competencies of the teachers in that school, and what resources are available in that school environment. And then last, looking at the community level, we're thinking about economics, right? So looking at whether we're talking about looking at, is this an impoverished area? What are the opportunities that are available to youth in terms of maybe even getting a job, or to their parents in terms of employment and unemployment levels, et cetera.
Oops. Yes. So finally, we get a chance to hear our panelists. And so we're going to ask them some questions and hear what it is that they have to say about these topics. So we want to jump right into it. So the first question is, in what ways do you experience racial discrimination in your life? And this is anywhere: school, social settings, relationships, family, civic organizations, social organizations, athletic, your sports or whatever, or if at all. So that's an open question. Are you experiencing it? And if so, where? And anyone can start, and you can unmute yourself.
I could start with answering that question. I think it's interesting because recently I took a trip outside of the country, and I had an experience with my sister when we go inside this. We went inside the mall and we went inside of a sports store, and we were being followed, which was like, I went to Brazil, and even though there was a lot of Black people where I was at, I was still being followed by people who, if they came to America, would be considered Black. And I think it's interesting because like the privilege you have of being from somewhere else, like being able to speak English in itself allows you to maneuver in certain ways, but still how people perceive you, like by the color of your skin, you're still going to be treated as with caution or seen as a criminal. So that's one place where I've experienced it. And even now that I'm in college, I still experience it a lot with professors, you know, and it's interesting. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I actually have two instances where I can think. One of them is like more recent, actually more common for me to see. A lot of people comment on my features a lot, like I'm not supposed to, have longer hair, longer eyelashes, and like they comment on it as a way to say like, well, that's nice for you to have it as a Black woman, like as though this is not a common thing. And an incident would have to be back when I was in elementary school. I can remember when I went to a predominantly white elementary school. I would say it's about 5 other Black children that were there. And during Black History Month, my teacher emphasized that I should be happy that they were celebrating Black History Month because this is for us. We wouldn't be doing this if you weren't here. And it kind of made me feel that as though like she didn't really care that, that these things were experienced by other people, not just because, oh, I'm Black, I should be happy. This can happen to anyone. People can be taken advantage of. People can be, taken away from their home. This can happen. So the fact that she emphasized that, oh, because you're Black and we're celebrating this for you, you should be happy. It never sat well with me.
I can tell by the way you're talking about it. It's like it happened yesterday. It's like, so it's very fresh in your mind, and you were very young. The problem with, us experiencing these things at an early age is that they get crystallized for us at an early age. And the meaning that we make of it is based on our ability developmentally to process what's happening. And so we could process it completely wrong. And it gets crystallized like that for a long time. And it takes work later. Some people might not even realize that the way they think about it is problematic, right? For themselves. And they may never think they want to work on it. But if you do, then it takes some real work to try to undo that. It's almost like, you know how if you let grits sit, if you don't put some water in that pot, trying to clean that pot, a dry grits, it's encrusted. And that's how it is. When we don't get those things taken care of right at the time, right? That they become encrusted, they become crystallized, and they could be very inaccurate, right? And so our thinking about who we are and our worth can, really be tampered with in that kind of way. Yeah, absolutely. It's like you like the grits example. It's like People who've had grits understand. Put that water in that pot. Yeah. So
Can I add to that point?
yeah.
When you said about like it doesn't show up or you don't necessarily realize it right away, not until I got into a certain age where I started reflecting about like my schooling stuff, I was like, wow, that was really messed up. And I see how I act now because of that. So it does definitely, it's post-traumatic stress, you know, it is serious.
It is. It is. I was thinking about you too, because I was thinking about how well you're able to articulate things that are happening to you. But so often when you're younger, so Peyton, I was going to ask you about some of your experiences. So thinking when we're younger and those things happen, we often are not able to recognize them for what they are, to create barriers, over ourselves, like plexiglass. We need those kind of barriers so people can't get through to us, and we can continue to function and perform as with all of our talents and skills. So I was wondering, Peyton, did you have anything that you wanted to contribute to this conversation?
Yes, actually. Just last night, I was playing a game with one of my friends, and he isn't Black. And we were on a game, and it was a volleyball game. We were just playing, and then out of nowhere, this other person comes in, and he calls me a discriminatory term, a racist term, and I honestly didn't know what to do in that moment, but to just laugh it off because that's it's like why would you even think to do that at this moment? I don't even know you. So for you to come and say that to me while I'm trying to play a game with my friend was extremely rude and racist. And it is so normalized for people to do that in games that like nobody is fazed by anymore. So it's just it's normalized. It's been normalized.
That's deep. That is deep. It's been.
Oops. Dr. Wessel, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, that is deep. That it's normalized. That such anti-human behavior, it becomes normalized. And so I always think about these things in terms of from a humanistic perspective about understanding the basic rules of operation. What are humans supposed to be doing? What does it mean to be a fully functioning human? And so on. And people need to be reminded of that, of what that means. But Peyton, the thing that comes to mind is really about what I talk about all the time about continuous traumatic stress, CTS. And it's got these 4 rules. And I say to everybody, whenever you hear me, if you don't remember anything I talked about, remember those 4 rules of continuous traumatic stress. And one of those is that it happens suddenly. It can come out of anywhere. And I think that's the most egregious. It's like when you're sitting there minding your own business, having a good time, and someone needs to introduce this out of nowhere, right? And it throws you off, right? You're like really in a zone, enjoying yourself. And then you have to deal with this thing. And it can take you to a completely different place. So it prevents you from your cognitive functioning. So now instead of thinking whatever it is you were thinking before, now you're thinking about that thing, right? So it's very disruptive in that sense, right? And also we're responding. So fortunately, there's been some people who started engaging in research around race-based stress, and what they're doing is they're getting biomarkers to see how people are responding in these circumstances. So I would imagine if they had some equipment hitched to you, Peyton, that your breathing would have intensified, your temperature would have gone up, you might have had sweaty palms. These are all signs of stress. So this is where we get the proof that these kinds of interactions are disruptive and distressful for us. And what we need to do as adults to help protect children is to have ways in which we can work with you so that you are armed and you know what to do, right? So that is what we need to concentrate on, which is why we ask that question to adults. How often do you talk about race-based stress? Because children are dealing with it all the time, but yet we're not talking about it. We're not talking with them about it, and we're not giving them the tools that they need to be able to work with it. That is awesome. Y'all are amazing. Okay, so the next question was, do you experience those things? And you're already talking about that. I'd like to know about witnessing. So can you give us some examples? This is for any of you, of when you were a bystander watching a racial microaggression, and what it was like for you to watch it happening.
Well, in schools, when we are watching a movie and it's raining or it's dark outside and the teacher turns the light out, all eyes go on to the Black person that's in the room. And then a white kid will scream out, "Oh my goodness, where did they go?" As if that's a funny joke to make. But I don't understand what's funny about my skin color or the way I look.
Well, Peyton, you're gonna make me wanna go to your school and pick out these people. Bam, bam, bam. Who is this? Oh my, I'm angry. I'm angry just hearing about these experiences. It's not okay. It's not okay. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
I like to also piggyback on it. I've noticed in environments where there are darker African Americans around, that's like, those are like the times when you'll hear a lot of racial slurs thrown, and comments about, oh, you can't see them when you turn off the lights, and you're dark as midnight, and other things like that. Like, they try to emphasize that your darkness isn't okay and that it's a problem, and it's not. But people love to emphasize that too. I guess in some ways show inferiority within skin complexion, which I don't approve of at all. And I comment where I can, because I don't feel that, you know, some people are less than just because they are darker skin, or they are higher than because they're lighter skin. I do not believe in that, and I do not condone that. But I have seen multiple times living in New Orleans. The few times that I have went out of state, I was able to see that. Like when I went to Las Vegas, I seen that a few times, and I was actually shocked, because I thought that, you know, around there, you know, things might be a bit better, because, you know, down south tends to have a racial stigma to it. But it's everywhere you go. Maybe micro, maybe macro, but it is there.
Yeah. Peyton, I just want to say that you're dazzling, and like to work through that experience, because if you do hold on to it, it is going to show up later in life. So don't hold on to other people's stuff. And I had an experience where I was coming out of Target, and this woman was chasing down these two Black children. They looked like they were about 11 and 7, and they were holding an Amazon package. And this woman, being a Karen, you know, she thought that these children were stealing the package off of somebody else's, like stealing the package, when in actuality, the children went in to run an errand for their parent to grab a package out of that little Amazon box and pick up their package. And she's threatening to call the police, recording them, all these kind of things. And I'm like, I'm standing there and I'm watching this go down, and I'm stuck a little bit, but then I have to tell her, I was like, you don't record children like that. You don't do that. And then she starts to pace walk as I'm walking behind her. I say, you don't do that. You don't record children like that. And then lo and behold, the mother sees her kind of running off, you know, and that's when the white woman decided to start running away. You know, she ran into, I guess, the building that she lived into, because someone just let her in. And she ran and hid into the room, but I was like telling the mom, that's the woman who was recording your children, da 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 da. And then it was interesting because the man who opened the door for her, apparently he was a deputy, or he said he was a police officer. So just the instance for him to just be like, oh, I'm a police officer, off duty, by the way, no badge, no nothing, and stuff like that. And so him feeling the need to take control, but also you could tell in his language he was siding with the white woman, still trying to protect this white woman, not realizing how she just assaulted these kids, and this mother. And so it's a really triggering experience, because you start to feel your body tighten up, like you said, about that stress coming up. It's like, what do you do? And then when you see nobody else around you not doing anything, that makes it even worse. So yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, I could see that in the comments in the chat where people are talking about the doing nothing, of what it means when people don't do anything on the side, which is why I asked this business, what happens when you're witnessing it, what is going on for you. So what are some of your coping strategies, and what do you rely on to remain emotionally healthy?
Well, one thing I do is I stay mindful of the fact that I'm beautiful within myself, and that, no one's opinion can change that. And I'm also mindful that not everyone is like that. So, like I said in the story, how my teacher was, after that experience, I was sort of like kind of guarded around older white women. But eventually I was able to, like, I'm meeting all these new people, and they're not showing me these different, negative experiences and things. So eventually I was able to see that, people aren't all the same. They are different, and staying mindful that there are some people who just are rooted in negativity, and then there are people who understand that we are all human beings and that we're just different than one another. So mainly mindfulness, and sometimes I have to step back and look within myself and make sure that, I'm not keeping a hold of any aggressions, because I don't believe that'll help me grow.
Anybody else want to weigh in on that? I think that Andrea's got that started, but there may be other ways that people are coping.
I can speak on how I more so don't have a coping mechanism, because I do have Black friends and Black peers, and sometimes we share experiences, but none of us really know how to cope with those experiences. We just talk about them, but then they're like brushed to the side with other topics. So I feel like it's just a way to avoid speaking on something that shouldn't be happening, but also like trying to get it out there that we're struggling with this, but we have no idea how to fix it.
Well, I can tell you that definitely having a group where you talk about it is an intervention. So you can definitely tell yourself you are doing something. Having that group helps to normalize. So instead of you experiencing it and internalizing it and thinking what they're saying is true, or they're saying it because I'm not worthy, or any of those things.
You're the only one that it's happening to. That's another thing.
Right. So instead of that, you're with other people you're sitting around saying, hey, that's crazy, that's whack, that doesn't make any sense, I don't like that. All of you saying that together is an intervention in of itself, of you coming together and talk about that. Yes, you do need some other skills, that's true. But I do want to tell you, yes, that's awesome that you're doing that. Another thing that is good is talking about things in the light of day. So one of the things that we know about trauma and about perpetrators of trauma is that the reason why they can get away with it is because nobody says anything, because people are feeling the shame. for so long, Black people have, we've really been put in a box such that we're afraid to talk about these things. And some of those things, Andrea, are regional. Yes, that's true. I remember coming when, oh my goodness, I raised my kids here in New Orleans, but it was back in the late 1980s when I first got here. And people would whisper whenever they wanted to talk about Black people, white people, they'd be like, what? And I was like, what? And it's like, really? You have to whisper it? Why? They know we're different, you know, that we look different, that we have different ethnic or cultural backgrounds. I don't understand how that gets to be whispered. If you were looking at a field of flowers and you saw some pink roses, would you whisper pink? I mean, you know, that is a learned response, that our differences mean something. It's not just a descriptor. It is something that qualifies you or disqualifies you. And we are so afraid of the penalties of even talking about the aggressions that we whisper about the aggressions for fear that there would be retribution. And there often is, right? So there's power in being able to talk about it and say, that's wrong, that's racist, what you've done is hurtful to me, to be able to do that. So even this webinar is an act of coping, is an act of resistance. So Peyton just being a part of this is speaking publicly to say, I've experienced some things, those things were harmful to me, right? And I am not ashamed that they happened to me. Perpetrators should be ashamed that they did it, but I'm not ashamed that it happened to me. And I'm gonna tell other people. I'm gonna speak out against it. I'm gonna talk about it. So I see you as finding your voice in being able to talk about it, right? So you hear Andrea and Karia talking, and you know, Karia's like, yeah, not only do I talk about me, I confronted that woman, right? And so on. So we find our voice eventually as we develop and as we acquire these skills to deal with race-based stress, we will learn to be able to respond even better. And there's no endpoint. I know I could fill a room talking about today the things that I experienced, and I look back and I didn't respond. I think, oh, I could have said this or I could have done that. So there's no endpoint of you finally reached this point in your life, right? In doing that. I've talked to older people, you know, than me, my elders, and they too talk about things they could have done or said. So it is very, very difficult and challenging for us to be able to deal with these things. And we have allies. So you see some of the people who are here today are our allies. They're people who understand, relate, and they're there to support you. But a lot of times we don't know they're there until we say something, and it gives them the courage to speak up and be able to say something. One of the things about racism is that it is like a hammer. It will not only get us, it'll get our allies as well. So that's important to understand. When they get people, they get them all. So even if you have white friends who are saying, you know, hey, when they speak up, they'll be ostracized as well. You know, people will start calling them, you know, the N lover, you know, et cetera. So they get penalized as well. So it's important for us to understand, yeah, we will develop these skills. There are also allies that we have, people who are willing to speak out and so on, and speak truth to justice. Last questions are, what advice do you have for others, whether it's teachers, parents, other students? What's some of the advice that you have that you want to share with people?
Some advice I would probably have for adults of all colors, to just be a listener sometimes. You don't always have to, know the answer. Sometimes like children really just need to be listened to. And, that can solve a lot of the issues that they are actually having, just listening. Because a lot of times they don't feel like they're heard. And they feel that it's just them or just their friends they're experiencing this, and they're thinking, oh, well, adults don't understand. We have all been children, so we do understand, and we may have experienced something similar or, experienced the exact same thing. But the fact that they feel that way, and, you may have felt that way when you were a child, please be a listener.
Even if you don't have the right answer, you don't even know what to say necessarily, if you can at least listen. That's something. Okay. Fair enough.
I would like to add to that. I think parents and teachers really have to do their own personal work, because I just think that when parents and teachers do respond, like you can still hear that their own personal experiences, like kind of like if they haven't handled like being called a name or being made fun of because of their hair or their skin, and then they tell their children like, oh, you just need to straighten your hair. Well, that's not the answer. You need to let the children know that their hair is beautiful as it is, so parents and teachers have to do their own work as well, so children can see an example of being better.
Mm-hmm. Besides the fact there's no end to that, that's a bottomless pit. Yeah. I'd like you if only you were taller. I'd like you only if you were shorter. I'd like you if you were thinner. I'd like you if you were heavier. I'd like you if you were lighter, if you were darker, if you were smarter, if you were dumber. I mean, it's a bottomless pit. And it never ends, and it doesn't make a difference. Mm-mm. If you were any of those things, they still wouldn't like you. So it's like, be yourself and enjoy who you are. Absolutely. On all levels, right? Be able to do that. Peyton, any advice to anyone?
Really just adding on to Andrea's point, please just listen. Because sometimes I don't need anyone to tell me what I can do to fix it, or I need advice on it. I really just need you to listen to me most of the time. So I feel like just having someone that will actually listen to you and not put their input in or having their own opinions on it, just for them, just having somebody to talk to would just be like a great outlet.
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, now it's time to turn this over to Dr. Pettyon so that she can handle our Q&A, questions in the chat and questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom. Dr.
Yes. Pettyon. Thank you so much, Dr. Wessel-Latunji, and thank you to our panelists for sharing your experiences and your insights and your suggestions with us. We appreciate you. So I'm gonna, I put some reminders into the chat, but if you do have a question, feel free to share it in the Q&A. I can see it a lot easier there than the chat box. But I'm gonna start with a couple of questions that we have there so far. So we did have a question from an attendee specifically for Zakaria. And I think you mentioned earlier towards the beginning of the panel about some experiences that you've had with professors, like at the university level. And so someone was wanting to know more about that.
I would say the most recent experience is that I'm dealing with a professor who you could see that they're trying to be one of those people who like really can connect with everybody, but you still see that they pick on Black students more than white students. Like one student came in late, brown skin, and she was like, now you owe me coffee, right? A white student comes in late and they're like, oh, how you doing? And I'm like, even small things like that to me, that's like, okay, why didn't that person owe you coffee, And so it's just like, to me, even if it's just, I don't know, that bothered me. That kind of got under my skin. So that's kind of one of the things I was speaking on.
Thank you for sharing that, DeCarrie. I appreciate you.
It could be very
And so
subtle. It seems like a small thing, but I think a lot of times because we've been traumatized, a lot of times we are hyper vigilant. So we're like keeping up with, okay, what did she say to this person? All right, let's see what's gonna happen. All right, are they gonna call me in first? Is my party gonna be sat down? Are they gonna skip over me? We are like on it because we've had so many of these experiences. We're like paying close attention to seemingly small and seemingly unimportant things, but they become super important when it's a string of them happening over and over and over again. Then yes, we start to pay attention to those things.
right. I keep hearing the word or the root of like sensitized. So we're either like hypersensitive to interactions or we're like desensitized, like to the point where we're not as, vigilant or picking up on things. So that's something to know as well. So Tracy Taylor in the chat wants to know if you all have someone or like an ear to listen to. So maybe if each of you can share a little bit more about your suggestion about how you wish that folks would listen to you more. Who is someone in your life that listens well, and what makes them a good listener?
So in my life, my mom is my listener. She's the person who nurtured me and taught me everything. And we have a type of relationship where, if I have any questions or concerns about anything, she just listens to it. Like, she doesn't say anything. She just lets me voice everything. And then like she may ask a question, to get a better understanding. But normally, like after I finish something, like she'll ask, well, what do you want to do, before offering anything. And then she allows me to, ask, like, can I get your advice, or what would you do? Like, she lets me guide the conversation versus her just immediate, like, well, this what you should do kind of thing.
Thank you for that. What about others?
Like I said earlier, for me and my friend group, that is a really good support for me. We're like slowly trying to discover how to figure out how to like take charge and take action on these problems we're talking about. And we're like slowly but surely getting there. And I think it's a really good opportunity for growth.
I would also say my mom and my sister are big listeners. I feel like what makes them good listeners about it is that they agree with me. So I mean, that kind of helps. I don't know, but like having somebody who like would just be like, who has an understanding helps with listening. Be like, I'm not speaking gibberish, or like they understand what I'm coming from. So it's not, having context helps with listening.
Yeah, so I love that you all shared both adults and other peers of yours, and described some ways that that they can be good listeners. And I think we also answered Don Johnson's question in the chat as well, just things to look for. Did you all want to add anything to that? They asked what they could do to be the right listener, like how, any other like suggestions. So I'm hearing like maybe like agreeing with you, like DeCarrie said, but what I hear from that is like not negating your experiences, or denying that what you experienced happened. Any other suggestions or tips for listening? Maybe DeCarrie covered it all. Maybe you all shared some really good tips. Okay, not a problem. So we do have one more question in the Q&A feature, and it's specifically for Peyton. And so Isabella is interested in how your friend responded. So you shared that you were unfortunately called a racial slur. And so she asked about how your friend responded and maybe like how you wish that he responded.
I think it was like a really awkward moment for both of us because we're both really caught off guard. I didn't even know how to respond to it. And so I think that kind of influenced the way he responded to it. I didn't really think about it much until just now that it like actually happened, because I just like brushed it off after that night happened. And really, I don't think it was his fault. because the way I reacted, it was like we're just both very caught off guard in the moment. And now that I think about it, I didn't say anything else because I'm just so used to that happening that it didn't really matter. I wasn't fazed by it anymore. So I don't feel like it was a bad reaction because he's also a person of color too. So I guess it's like a shared similar experience.
Okay, thank you for sharing that, Peyton. So this question is for each of you, and Karen is interested to know if this discussion will change the way that you kind of handle these experiences going forward. So this will cause you to, like, you know, project a little bit. You have to think about the future, and it might be one of those situations like Peyton was just describing where, you know, you don't really realize it in the moment, but maybe it's something that you think about in the future. So how might this discussion like impact how you handle situations in the future?
That's a really great question.
I believe this discussion will help me how I handle with my clients when I'm dealing with like underage clients to, you know, understand that they may be experiencing these type of things on a daily, you know, just being in New Orleans in general. And I can really use like aspects from what Peyton was saying, and also Dakaria was saying, to help them with their situations.
So one of the questions was for Dr. West and me to share a story. So I put a story in the chat of what I remember when I think about it. I think about being in middle childhood, in school, and having these, the subtle microaggression of being skipped over. I mean, when I think about it now, it's just such poor teaching, you know, going down the road, each child, tell me where your folks are from. Tell me where your folks are from. And then they just like, you're sitting there and they just skip and then go to the next kid behind you. And it's like, wow, what? I don't even get to tell my story. Like, it's like, I don't have a culture. I don't have a history. I got nothing. That's the message that it sends is you don't count. Just skip over you. So that's my story.
Yeah, I think that those moments that that no one advocated for us, or maybe we didn't advocate for someone else, are oftentimes the ones that plague us the most. We think, wow, it would have been nice. Or if we're thinking about other people's side, that's the other thing. It's like, and nobody said anything. None of the other students said anything, right? Thinking to yourself, okay, there was no, even the other students of color, maybe you all didn't band together and say, okay, next time we're going to talk to her, we're going to tell our parents. The other thing is, I think it's really important that the students brought up, all of you brought this up, is the degree to which what you are experiencing is heard, validated, and at least some aspect of what you think or felt is agreed to. Like, I understand why that's make you angry or make you sad or make you feel like you're less than or unimportant or not heard or not equal to or as important as anyone else. It can be a challenge, like you said, when people haven't done their work. That's a really good point, because sometimes parents will say, do you know what I had to deal with? Like, they actually beat me up. They're just making a face or, you know, whatever. It can end up being, they can end up minimizing it and saying, I wish that's all I experienced, and come back to me when you have something real, right? It can be the reaction. Or it could be, you know, that's how they are. So get over it, suck it up and get with the program. Like, so it's really important to be able to not necessarily say compare it to what you've been through, or to be like hearing it because you're so hurt that your child was treated that way, or You just jump in and say, well, I'm going to talk to that teacher. I'm going to get them told, I'm going to call their parent, or I'm going to do this thing. It's really important to be able to find out what is the student or child feel, want. And even giving all these options of all the things you could do is so helpful. Like I've done it with my clients is, oh, what did you want to say? What did you want to do? What do you wish could have happened? I'm like, okay, we go through the whole list. Okay, what else could have happened? What else could you say? What else could you do? And then we go through all that whole entire list. Okay, and now that we created that entire list, you can just make them disappear, or you can totally change them into a different person, even silly, crazy stuff. Now that we've done the whole list of things that could be done about it, right? What do you actually want to do? Right? You want to call them the big dogs? You calling that person who's going to go to that school and scare those people to death? Do you want to do something subtle? Do you want to use humor? Do you want to pull a person to the side and say something? Like there's all kinds of things you can do, and it's a full range of activities, right? It becomes, so now that we've kind of talked about sort of the fantasy that you could do, right? And then all the way down to nothing at all because it's not that deep to you maybe. What do you want to do, right? So it's not like I took it over and I'm going to handle it and don't you worry about it, but more like, yeah, let's talk about what could be done and what do you feel most comfortable with, okay? And now we've decided on what that thing is. What can I do to help you? We need to practice, we do some role playing, so what is it that I can do to help you with this? So I need to buck you up and we get this thing going. You want me in the background, but I don't say anything. You want me to sit in the car? You let me know if it didn't go well. Like, what do you want? What do you need so that you feel empowered to address the issue, right? And it's the option of your choosing. That I'm here as a consultant. I can give you some suggestions, or I can just be your cheerleader. Go ahead, you're gonna do it, you got it, whatever. And depending on how it turns out, you let me know. And then we'll come back to the drawing board and say, are you happy with the outcome? You're not happy with the outcome. Do you still want to do something else, or you want to let it go? Do you want my help, or do you want me to call in somebody else? Maybe I know somebody who knows somebody with the school board. They can go ahead and talk to this person. We want it to be a big hit. We want it to be a little hit. Is it somebody who's generally a great person who just made a mistake? We just need to let them know that that was hurtful, or maybe they missed something. It really is about being able to come down with this whole list of what could happen, empowering that student to be able to say, okay, now that I've thought about it, I know what I want to do, what would make me feel as though how I feel has been being considered, even if it's just by you, or if we need to make a major change in this environment.
And sometimes it's all of the above.
And all of the above. Sometimes it's all of it.
Different people taking different parts of it and being able to do it. I remember when I was working on my dissertation. No, I wasn't even working on my dissertation, but I was taking a course in graduate school. And I mean, there was just so much racism going on in that classroom. And I was being targeted, and the professor either didn't know what to do or didn't care. And it was just steady. Every time I went to that class, it was just steady, 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 steady. And I had been working in a community at the time. And I remember talking to some community people about, I don't know if it was a look on my face and they asked me what was wrong, or somehow I started telling them about what was going on in that classroom. And I remember one person saying, you want us to come up there and straighten them out? And I was in the midst of complaining. And when they said that, I looked and I laughed and laughed and laughed. And I thanked them so much that they really, really wanted, wanted to protect me and would do that. And I'm like, ooh, that's such a lovely thought. But no, I don't need you to come into that environment. But my attitude changed. I went from feeling like I'm a victim and I'm vulnerable and I have no power, right? And it went from that to feeling like, nah, I got a posse over here. And if they act up enough, I truly will let these community people come up in here and tell you about yourself, because you're bullying me because you think you're in control and you think you can get away with it, right? But my attitude changed. I went from being alone and being victimized to being a representative of the community. And I knew that I had backing. And so I felt stronger and was able to go back in and be able to make changes to that situation, including calling out some people of color who were in there who were not saying anything and letting me take the hit all by myself. And so then we formed a coalition and collectively then started telling white people that, you know, you can't talk to people like that and so on. So yeah, sometimes it takes, you know, a community. It takes a village to be able to deal with that. So that's good. That's good. Well, we have hit the hour and a half. It has been an incredible time. It was such the right thing to bring you all in, for you to speak for yourselves about what you're doing, and your advice is right on. I love what you had to say. I could see that it really benefited the participants. As I said, this video will be up on our YouTube channel. I will send you the link so you can send it to other people. You can put it on your resume that you had the speaking engagement. So don't forget to do that and include it, which is awesome. You'll be invited to join the CREST program community. So if you wanted to come and sit in on other presentations, you certainly are welcome to do so. Definitely do that. I want to remind everybody, don't forget to do the post-webinar survey. It should pop up on your computer as soon as the webinar ends. We are thankful. Peyton, Andrea, Karia, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. We also get people commenting on the video, so you might want to check back every now and then to see what people had to say who were watching it asynchronously and weren't able to be with us today.
I just want to thank Geneva, who is not with us any longer, but for her and her brother, who did such an amazing musical performance. I think that the whole idea of Dear America, I Love You makes me think about James Baldwin, his whole idea of I love America more than any other country, but I reserve the right to criticize it. It's fair to say that yes, we love our country, but we still have a right to express the ways in which sometimes it doesn't love us the way it should love us, right? It's okay in any situation, in any relationship, to be able to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. There's a space for all of that. And to have the courage to talk about it in any space, especially a public space, is very remarkable and something worthy of respect. And so thank you so much for being here with us and sharing your experiences.
Thank you all. I think that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
October. So long, everybody.
I know.